Hey, what's up everybody? How's it going? Travis and Susie here from the Wolf Hunters. Welcome back to the channel. Those of you that are new, if you want to request your own personal reaction video, find that link in the description box below. There's a blue link in there. Click it and pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, live performances, sports, all kinds of videos.
All kinds.
And by the way, thank you to those that have already subscribed to the channel. We greatly appreciate you. Today's video is brought to you by Donk, bringing
his favorite orchestral moments for big drums.
Ooh.
By Richard Atkinson.
I'm gonna like this one. I like me some big drums.
Who doesn't like big drums?
Who doesn't like some big drums?
Lots of people like big drums. So well, I'm sure we'll love this. Donk says, "Hi Susie and Travis. Richard Atkinson is incredible at explaining what is going on underneath the music that makes it what it is. This is a recent video where he focuses on the big drums. That means timpani, and bass drums. Timpani.
In orchestral
music. And in this segment, his examples come from the music of Richard Strauss and Gustav Mahler. He is a forensic panthologist professionally, and this may explain his rather unconventional sense of humor. A sense of humor I relate to all well. I hope you all enjoy this look behind the score. Kindness regards, Don Quixote.
Don Quixote.
And then there's a timestamp.
Oops, hold on a second.
Oops, Travis did it again. There you go.
Alright.
All is good.
Is it?
All of it.
All is good.
All of it is good.
Let's do this.
Like
and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and feel free to comment below.
Big drums.
I like big drums.
Moving on to one of my favorite orchestrators, Richard Strauss. Before I reveal my favorite of his timpani and bass drum passages, I guess I should also mention his most famous, the opening of Also sprach Zarathustra, that begins with a literal pedal point played on the pedal of the organ, doubled by the contrabassoon, contrabasses, and bass drum, that introduces one of the most well-known timpani solos in orchestral music.
Oh, girl.
Getting bassy here.
It's all about that bass.
I know this.
Yes.
Why do I know this?
What do you mean?
Where do I know this from?
Everyone knows this.
Oh.
Right?
I don't know. It's like how they open up movies or something. What is it? Do you know?
I don't know. We've also, I think, reacted to this.
Oh, okay.
So.
But my favorite bass drum and timpani passage by Strauss is from my favorite of his many masterful symphonic poems, Don Quixote, an absolute tour de force of orchestration, thematic transformation, counterpoint, and musical storytelling that
I'm just saying you missed out on that one. Don K. You could have signed your name Don Quixote.
He did.
No, he didn't. He said Don
Quixote.
Oh, he just spelled it so that we could actually pronounce it. I see.
No, I think he pronounced it so that we would say it this way, but
that's what I mean. That's what I meant to say.
Oh, so that it wasn't exactly the same. Because if he spelled it like that, I would have known that it said Don Quixote.
Well, I guess you didn't miss out on that. I guess.
You missed out.
I guess I'm just not that bright.
Illustration, thematic transformation, counterpoint, and musical storytelling that I regard so highly that I spent the first 3 minutes of my Death and Transfiguration deep dive video talking instead about Don Quixote. Specifically, the brilliant second variation that uses flutter tonguing to simulate the flock of sheep he imagines as an army and defeats in one of his rare victories. Someday, when I have more energy, or more Patreon supporters, I'll do an extremely long and complicated Don Quixote deep dive.
Shameless
But
plug.
for this video, adequately explaining my favorite timpani and bass drum moment requires at least a shallow dive to understand which themes represent which characters. The composition begins with the flutes and oboes playing this short D major motif, representing Don Quixote, who, remember, is a gentleman who loses his mind, imagines himself to be a knight, and embarks on numerous amusing and mostly ill-fated adventures. Later in this long introduction, the solo cello that represents his character for the remainder of the piece finally enters with the entire theme, beginning with that same small motif, though now in minor, and then consisting of multiple additional small motifs.
Wow.
The passage I chose for this video is the final 10th variation, in which Don Quixote is defeated in battle by the Knight of the White Moon, in reality just a concerned neighbor trying to convince him to come home and avoid further injuries. The variation begins with a timpani roll and that first Don Quixote motif, but slower and dispersed among many instruments, making it hard to visualize but still easy to hear, answered by its original version, and then by the second motif, third motif, and actually a fifth motif from much later in the theme that I didn't play for you before, all occurring at once. The first Don Quixote motif now repeats, but this time we suddenly hear this fanfare representing the Knight of the White Moon. This combination continues, but now accompanied by a roll of the bass drum to increase the suspense as their horses run towards each other. One more incomplete entry of Don Quixote's motif brings us to the most climactic moment when unexpectedly the whole orchestra drops out for half a bar, except for the continuing suspenseful bass drum roll and the sudden triple forte entrance of the lone solo cello completing the motif from the prior page. Even at triple forte, this single note seems comically pathetic when immediately completely drowned out by the ensuing also triple forte entrance of most of the wind instruments playing the Knight of the White Moon's fanfare. A perfect representation of Don Quixote's delusional confidence just before being knocked to the ground by his opponent. This moment of battering also includes my all-time favorite Strauss timpani passage, when they suddenly reappear to reinforce the hammering rhythm of the fanfare. After this embarrassing defeat, we continue hearing incomplete entries of the orange motif, likely meant to depict the stunned Don Quixote floundering on the ground, before this whole episode ends with an abrupt rest.
They did this highlighter effect.
Yeah, I like that.
It really helps.
Woo!
The Knight of the White Moon now holds Don Quixote to his promise that if defeated, he would return home and stop trying to be a knight. And Don Quixote's tragic homeward march of shame is now depicted musically by this constant drumbeat from the timpani, over which the orchestra plays numerous themes from prior episodes to represent his entire delusional career as a knight, flashing before his eyes all at once as his mind gradually clears and he comes back to his senses. Before I play for you this spectacular passage, I briefly have to acquaint you with each of these themes so you know what to listen for. I'll start with this purple theme that represents Sancho Panza, Don Quixote's illiterate but extremely loyal squire who rides a donkey. When it first appears, this theme is played by the bass clarinet and tenor tuba, two of the most humorous sounding instruments in the orchestra, followed by this second motif played by the solo viola. Next, this green theme represents Dulcinea, the imaginary object of Don Quixote's courtly love, though based on an actual peasant woman from a neighboring town. Her theme first appears as this wistful oboe solo, accompanied by strums from the harp. But the version of this theme that appears in the final 10th variation includes this distinctive turn, so let's first hear how that version sounds in a different context. In the glorious 3rd variation, during which Don Quixote is fantasizing about her, and we hear her theme with the turn portion entering in very close imitative counterpoint. Try to ignore in this recording the unintentional, even closer imitative counterpoint played by the glockenspiel. Also, since this is a video about timpani, notice how you can almost hear Don Quixote's heart swelling when this timpani roll crescendos.
Oh. I like the balloon.
Next, we have these dark blue downward glissandos, more of a sound effect than a theme, that often appear during moments of humiliation, like at the end of the 4th variation, when a procession of pilgrims knocks Don Quixote off his horse. Notice the Sancho Panza theme, played by the same 3 instruments, as he helps his master, who is lying on the ground in a daze, after which we hear 2 humiliation glissandos played by the bass tuba and contrabassoon to end the variation.
That's a good friend. That's a glissando, all right.
That's the tuba sound you don't want to hear.
By the way, when it makes sense in conversations with friends, I've been known to make the so-called sad trombone sound effect, either the tritone, wah, wah, or the descending chromatic scale, wah, 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 wah. I think from now on, I might just use the humiliation glissando instead. Whoa. Now returning to the passage of interest, the relentless timpani drum beat accompanies staggered imitative entries at different speeds of that fourth Don Quixote motif that we haven't yet heard in this variation, combined first with both the humiliation glissandos and this single intense shrieking entry of the Dulcinea theme, completely transformed from its usual character. Then we hear the original first Don Quixote motif, combined with both the viola Sancho Panza motif and the bass clarinet and tenor tuba Sancho Panza motif. As I mentioned before, this cacophonous mess eventually resolves as Don Quixote's mind clears, and at this point in the story, he briefly contemplates becoming a simple shepherd instead of a knight. So of course, we now hear the sheep theme from the second variation, combined with the Sancho Panza motifs. Here's what that theme originally sounded like, for those of you who didn't watch that prior video, accompanied by the hilarious flutter-tonguing sheep noises. Now, as you finally listen to this incredible passage from the final variation, try to remember all of these themes at once, united only by the constant drumbeat of the timpani. Moving on, the Mahler symphonies contain so many of my favorite timpani and bass drum passages that I could easily dedicate an entire video in this series just to him, but I'll conclude this video by doing the impossible and choosing only one example from the otherworldly third movement of his fourth symphony. Loyal followers of this channel know from prior videos that I consider the final bars of this movement to be some of the most sublimely ethereal music ever composed. But this ending is preceded by a powerful triumphant outburst that includes incredible moments for both bass drum and timpani.
Like art,
this sudden explosion is even more surprising because of the preceding bars that die down to triple piano, playing two of the main motifs of the movement. These downward sighing motifs and these pizzicato figures in the bass. Remember especially this portion for later. The outburst from the whole orchestra includes an immediate timpani roll, quickly joined by the triangle, and these invigorating string and harp arpeggios. When the trumpets enter, listen for this cymbal crash on the downbeat, followed by this astonishing entrance of the bass drum. For me, the most glorious bass drum moment I can think of from any orchestral music, that I can only describe as the shattering of boundaries between two dimensions. This quickly fades away to prepare for the fortissimo entrance of the timpani in the next bar, playing that pizzicato bass motif from just before the outburst, that is now also still being played by the pizzicato contrabasses. Of course, even the giant contingent of contrabasses Mahler preferred for his symphonies, playing triple forte pizzicato notes, isn't much of a match for a single timpanist playing the same motif with both mallets for extra emphasis. This accompanies the trumpets playing the pink sighing motif, with the horns playing these triumphant dotted figures, before both horns and trumpets suddenly play for the only time in this movement these themes returning from the first movement, and that also reappear shortly after this in the finale. Mahler now returns to the motifs from this movement to end this outburst and set the stage for the most breathtaking ending of almost any music I've ever heard. My discussion of which you can hear in that video from 7 years ago. But to end this video, just listen to this glorious percussive outburst.
So soft and beautiful. Very gentle. That violence came in Pearson. Smooth as butter.
Woo!
That was.
Beautiful.
Wow. That was a cool video. This guy does a really good job. His description
He's
of
so
stuff
good
is,
at explaining
oh
things.
my gosh.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
like the highlighting and just breaking it down
he did a
really
great job.
helped.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Thank you so much for that one. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed hanging out, hit like and subscribe. If you want to request your own personal reaction video, look for that link right there in the description box below the video. There's a blue link. Click it and pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, sports videos, live performances, all kinds of things. Stay tuned. Stay positive.
We love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.